The night was silent inside the alien mansion. The halls stretched long and empty, filled with shadows that moved with the pale glow of the moon outside. The air was still, almost heavy, as if the entire place was holding its breath. It was midnight, the hour when most of the servants had already gone to their quarters. But one maid remained awake. She moved quietly, her steps careful on the polished floor. Her name was not important to the masters, nor to anyone else in the household. She was simply the Maid, an alien born into service. Her green skin shimmered under the cold light, and her pointed ears twitched at the faintest sound. She lived her life in silence, obeying commands, keeping secrets, and never asking questions. That was what it meant to be a servant in this house, but tonight felt different. There was a sound, soft, irregular, and unfamiliar. It came from one of the corridors that led to the master's chamber. She stopped, her heart tightening. At this hour, no one was allowed near that part of the mansion. Her first thought was that it must be a human. The mansion had several of them working as laborers, weak creatures used for heavy lifting, cooking, and cleaning. They were not trusted, only tolerated. To find one wandering near the master's chamber at midnight was unthinkable. The maid tightened her grip on the lantern she carried. The light flickered across the walls as she moved closer. Each step made the sound clearer, soft shuffling like footsteps that did not belong. She reached the corner and paused. Her breathing slowed, her ears listening. There it was again, deliberate and calm, not the nervous scurry of a frightened servant. When she turned the corner, she froze. There he was, a human, standing in the middle of the hall as if he belonged there. His figure was outlined by the glow of the lantern. He did not look afraid. He did not even look surprised to see her. Instead, he lifted his eyes and met her gaze with calm confidence. The maid's first instinct was anger. How dare he be here? How dare a fragile human stand so close to the master's chamber at this forbidden hour? She stepped forward quickly, her voice sharp. You should not be here. Do you not know what happens to humans who break the rules? The human did not flinch. He did not bow or beg. He simply tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. Do you? He asked. The question caught her off guard. Her anger wavered, replaced by confusion. This was not how humans acted. They were supposed to fear, to tremble, to run. Yet this one stood steady, as if midnight itself had no power over him. She tried again, her voice harder now. Leave at once. If the master finds you here, you will not live to see another sunrise. The human gave a faint smile. Perhaps. But perhaps it is the master who should fear what comes at sunrise. Her chest tightened. His words were strange, bold, dangerous. She took a step back without meaning to. The lantern shook in her hands, making the shadows dance across the walls. She studied his face, his eyes, and what she saw unsettled her even more. They were not the eyes of a weak creature. They were sharp, focused, filled with something she could not name. You are not supposed to speak like this, she whispered. Maybe not, he said. But you are not supposed to be awake either. Yet here we are. The silence that followed was heavier than any words. The maid realized she had a choice. Call for the guards or keep listening. Something inside her urged caution. Another part of her, deep and secret, urged curiosity. She held the lantern higher, its glow spreading across his face. He looked young, yet there was an agelessness about him. His clothes were simple, nothing more than what a human servant would wear, but he wore them with the ease of someone who had never known chains. Why are you here? She asked finally. To see what lies behind doors that should never be opened? He replied. His voice was calm, too calm for someone in such danger. Her ears twitched again. She could feel the mansion itself listening. Every wall, every stone seemed to lean closer to hear his words. Midnight was not supposed to be broken by such talk. And yet it was. The maid's skin prickled with unease. She had lived her life believing humans were weak. She had been told they were nothing more than tools. But standing before her now was one who looked at her not with fear, but with something far stronger. Go back, she whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. If you value your life, go back. But the human shook his head. It is not my life that is at risk tonight. It is theirs. Her heart skipped a beat. She opened her mouth to demand what he meant, but the words never came. The lantern's flame flickered violently, and in that dim light, his calm expression seemed to carry the weight of something vast and unseen. For the first time in her life, the maid felt uncertain. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps humans were not as weak as she had been taught. The silence between them deepened, filled with questions that had no answers. Midnight stretched on, endless and cold, and in that moment, the maid realized one thing: this encounter was only the beginning. The maid stood frozen, her lantern trembling in her hands. The human's calm words echoed in her mind. They were sharp, too sharp, like blades cutting through everything she thought she knew. For as long as she had lived, she had been told humans were nothing. Weak, silent, obedient. Yet this one stood in the forbidden hall at midnight, speaking like someone who carried secrets far greater than fear. She narrowed her eyes, trying to hold on to her authority. "You think words can protect you? You are only a servant here, no different from dust on the floor. One call from me, and the guards will drag you away." But the human did not move. He did not cower. Instead, he stepped closer into the glow of the lantern, his face clear, his eyes steady. They were not the eyes of prey. They were the eyes of someone who saw far beyond the walls of this mansion. "Call them if you wish," he said softly. "But before you do, ask yourself, why do I stand here without fear?" Her breath caught. The question slipped under her skin, making her uneasy. She had never thought about humans beyond their assigned roles. Yet this one forced her to think, forced her to see. She lifted her chin, trying to mask her doubt with anger. "You are bold for someone so fragile. Your bones break with little weight. Your skin tears with little force. What gives you the courage to speak as if you are strong?" The human's lips curved, not into arrogance, but into something quieter, something heavier. Strength is not always in the bones. Sometimes it is in the mind. Sometimes it is in the truth. The maid felt her heart tighten. The words were simple, yet they carried weight she could not deny. She hated it. She hated the way he spoke, as if he belonged to something greater than her kind. Still, curiosity crept into her voice. "And what truth is that?" He leaned slightly closer, his voice dropping low. "That your masters are not as untouchable as they believe. That secrets hidden in this place are not beyond the reach of human eyes." Her pulse quickened. The lantern light wavered between them, and the long shadows seemed to stretch deeper into the hall. She wanted to dismiss him, to call his words foolish, but she could not. There was a steadiness in him, a quiet certainty, that made her wonder if he was telling the truth. "You know nothing of this house," she said, though her tone had lost its sharp edge. "You know nothing of what you speak." The human's gaze did not falter. "I know enough. I know of passages carved into these walls. I know of doors that are never opened by daylight. And I know of the screams that your kind pretend not to hear." The maid's blood ran cold. She had never spoken of those things. No one ever did. And yet, this human stood in the dark, naming them as if he had seen them all. Her grip on the lantern tightened. "You should not know this," she whispered. "Should," he said, "does not change what is real." For the first time, she felt something new toward a human, not scorn, not anger, but unease. He was breaking the order of things with nothing but his voice. He was pulling her into a place where she did not want to go, a place where questions lived. Her training told her to end it, to sound the alarm, to silence him. But her heart whispered otherwise. Something in his presence held her still, as if midnight itself wanted her to listen. The human took a step back, his shadow stretching long across the floor. "You fear me now, though you will not admit it. But it is not me you should fear. It is what I will reveal." Her throat tightened. Fear and curiosity wrestled inside her, neither winning, both leaving her restless. She wanted to ask more. She wanted to demand answers. But as the clock in the distant hall struck the half-hour past midnight, she realized the night was only growing darker, and her questions would only grow heavier. The encounter was no longer just disobedience. It was becoming something else, something that could change everything. The maid's heart beat faster now. The forbidden hall felt smaller, as if the walls themselves had drawn closer to listen. She wanted to turn away to end the strange encounter, but her feet refused to move. The human's words pressed on her like an invisible weight. He was not begging for mercy. He was not running. He was standing as though he carried knowledge too heavy for silence. She tightened her grip on the lantern. "You speak of things you should not even know exist," she whispered. "If you have seen what is hidden here, then you are already dead." The human's eyes glimmered in the dim light, steady and unafraid. "Death," he said quietly, "is a price I have already counted." The maid's skin prickled. This was not the voice of a servant. It was the voice of someone who had seen what should never be seen. Her throat felt dry. She forced herself to speak. "What is it you think you know? Tell me." He did not answer at once. Instead, he walked to the wall beside him, running his hand across the polished stone. His fingers stopped at a barely visible crack. He pressed, and the maid gasped as the wall shifted slightly, just enough to reveal the outline of a hidden passage. Her breath caught. She had lived in this mansion her whole life, obeying orders, walking its halls, but she had never known of this door. Not once. Yet here stood a human, showing it to her as if it were nothing. Her voice trembled despite herself. "How did you find this?" The human looked at her, his face calm, his words low and deliberate. "Because I listen, because I watch, because your masters believe humans are blind and deaf, but we are not." The maid stepped closer, her eyes locked on the dark seam in the wall. She could feel the cold draft spilling out, carrying with it the faintest sound, whispers, maybe cries. She shivered, pulling back quickly. "You should not have opened it," she said, her voice shaking. "If they learn you know of this place, they will tear you apart." The human leaned in slightly, his words almost a whisper. "Then answer me this. Why do they hide it at all? Why bury secrets behind stone if their power is as great as they claim?" The question clawed at her mind. She had never dared think it, never dared doubt her masters. And yet, here it was, spoken by a human, planted in her head like a seed that could not be pulled out. Her hands trembled. She tried to hold on to her training, to the rules that had shaped her life. But doubt was growing fast. The human's eyes never left her. "You have heard the sounds at night. Do not lie to yourself. You know something is buried here. You have felt it." Her breath caught again. He was right. She had heard them, strange noises echoing through the stone walls when the moon was high. She had told herself they were dreams, tricks of the night. But deep inside, she had always known they were real. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "If this is true, why are you still alive?" The human's smile was faint, but it carried no joy. "Because they underestimate us. Because they believe chains and walls can keep us powerless. They forget that humans do not stop when told to stop. We find a way." The maid's chest tightened. She wanted to call him a liar, to claim his words were madness. But deep inside, a dangerous thought flickered. What if he was right? The mansion felt colder now, the silence heavier. She could not unsee the crack in the wall, could not unhear the muffled cries drifting through. Midnight had revealed a truth she was never meant to face. She stepped back, her voice sharp with fear. "You must leave this place. If anyone sees you here, you will not survive." The human shook his head. His voice was steady, final. "No, midnight is only the beginning. Soon this house will learn what humanity truly is." The lantern flame flickered hard, shadows stretching across the floor. The maid stood trembling, unable to answer, unable to move. She knew one thing now: she could no longer see humans as weak. And worse, she could no longer see her masters as untouchable. The maid's hands were cold around the lantern. Its glow trembled, as if it too feared what lingered in the hidden passage. She could not push away the sound that had slipped through the crack, low, muffled, and pained. For years she had told herself those noises were dreams, but the human had turned them into truth. She stepped back, trying to gather her strength. "You should not be here," she whispered, though the words felt empty now. "You are nothing more than a servant, a shadow." The human's eyes never left hers. "If I am nothing," he said, "why do you tremble before me?" Her breath caught. She wanted to deny it, to say she felt no fear. But the truth was plain in the way her voice faltered, in the way her chest rose and fell too quickly. She was trembling. Not because of his size or strength, he had neither, but because of the strange power that came from his presence alone. The human turned back to the wall. With practiced fingers, he pressed again, and the stone door shifted further. Cold air spilled out, carrying a metallic scent, sharp and bitter. The maid's stomach knotted. "Stop!" she cried, rushing forward. Her hand grabbed his arm without thought. She expected weakness, the frail bone of a creature she could break. Instead, she felt iron. His arm was solid, tense with strength she had not expected. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, she saw the human not as fragile, but as dangerous. He looked down at her hand on his arm. "Do you feel it now?" he asked calmly. Her grip loosened, fear pressing deeper. She stepped back, the lantern shaking. "What are you?" she whispered. He tilted his head slightly, the faintest trace of a smile on his lips. "Exactly what they feared I would become if I stopped bowing." The words sank like stones in her mind. She thought of the countless humans she had passed each day. Silent, bent under weight, eyes dull with obedience. Was it all an act? Or was this one different, something born outside their chains? The human bent closer to the wall, pressing once more. This time the stone shifted fully, revealing a dark passage beyond. The lantern's glow barely reached into it, but what it showed made her blood freeze. Rusted iron bars, chains bolted to the stone. The smell of blood and old sweat. Her voice cracked. "You should not have shown me this." "And yet," he said, his gaze fixed on her, "you cannot look away." The maid's chest tightened with a fear she could not contain. She had served this house her entire life, believing in the master's strength, in their order. But the truth inside this hidden place was different. It was ugly. It was fragile. And a human had been the one to reveal it. "You think you have power?" she said, though her voice trembled. "But when the masters learn of this, they will crush you. They will erase you." The human stepped forward, into the edge of the lantern's light. His shadow grew long, stretching across the wall like something larger than life. "Let them try," he said. "They have forgotten what humanity is. Tonight I remind them." The maid's heart pounded. His voice carried no arrogance, only certainty. It was the certainty of fire hidden under ashes, waiting to burn. She realized she was staring not at a servant, but at the spark of something dangerous. For the first time, she questioned her own place. Was she still loyal to her masters, or had the human planted doubt too deep to remove? She tightened her grip on the lantern, her mind racing. Midnight was no longer safe. Midnight had become a battlefield between silence and truth, and the human was no longer just a servant in the shadows. He was a force that could not be contained. The maid turned her gaze back to him. He stood calm, but his calm was not weakness. It was the calm of someone who carried storms within. She swallowed hard. "What will you do now?" He looked past her into the dark passage where chains hung like ghosts. His voice was steady, chilling. "What I must! And when the sun rises, they will know humanity does not kneel." The lantern flickered once more, and in that dim light, the maid knew her world had shifted forever. The maid's fingers tightened around the lantern until her knuckles burned pale. Its light shook across the hall, spilling against the stones and the hidden passage yawning open beside them. The air that crept out carried a weight, thick with sorrow and something far older than either of them. She could not take her eyes off it, yet she dared not step closer. The human stood at the threshold, calm as the night itself. He did not rush. He did not tremble. His voice, when it came, was quiet but sharp enough to cut through her thoughts. "You have served them without question," he said. "But you have also heard the cries in the dark. You have smelled the blood they tried to wash away. Tell me, do you still believe they are untouchable?" Her chest tightened. She wanted to say yes, to cling to the order that had given her life meaning, but her lips refused the word. The cries from the passage echoed too clearly in her memory, the screams that had haunted her nights. She shook her head, as if motion alone could push the thought away. "You are twisting my mind. That is what humans do. You speak in riddles. You plant doubt where none belongs." The human's gaze did not waver. "No, I do not plant. I only uncover what was always there." The maid's heart pounded. She wanted to look away from him, to retreat into the comfort of her silence. Yet she could not. Something in his eyes held her in place, as if he had already seen the path she would take long before she chose it. Finally, she whispered, "If you truly mean to rise against them, you will be destroyed. They will crush you, and all of your kind with you." The human stepped forward. His shadow grew across the floor, tall and defiant. "Maybe," he said. "But what is destroyed can be rebuilt, and what is feared can be remembered forever." His words struck her harder than any blade. They did not belong to a servant. They belonged to someone who carried the weight of an entire race on his shoulders. The maid's throat felt dry. For the first time in her life, she did not see him as less. She saw him as dangerous, yet also inevitable. Like a storm gathering on the horizon, impossible to stop. "You cannot stay here," she whispered, desperation cracking her voice. "If the masters find you near this place, there will be no hiding, no running." The human's faint smile returned, but it was cold now, carrying no warmth. "I do not need to hide. Let them find me. Midnight is only the beginning." He turned from the hidden passage, leaving it gaping open, its secrets spilling into the hall. As he walked past her, she felt her body stiffen, every instinct screaming to stop him, to call the guards. Yet her voice caught in her throat. She did nothing. He paused only once, his voice low and final. "When the sun rises, your masters will see what humanity truly is, and you will have to decide whose side you are on." The words wrapped around her like chains she could not break. She stood frozen, watching his figure disappear down the hall, swallowed by shadow. The lantern shook in her hand, its flame weak against the darkness. The passage behind her groaned softly, as if the walls themselves were alive. She turned to it, her skin crawling, her ears straining against the faint cries drifting out. She had lived her life believing the mansion was strong, unshakable, eternal. But now she knew the truth. It was hollow, fragile, built on secrets. The maid could no longer return to who she had been. The encounter had changed her, cracked her obedience, planted questions that would never leave her. She stood in the hall, torn between fear and a strange, dangerous respect for the human who had dared to break the silence. And as the lantern's flame trembled lower, she whispered to herself the words she could not ignore. Midnight was only the beginning.